Hello guys, welcome back to another video. In this video we're going to be going over eggs. Since back in the 1900s, the American Heart Association said that you were only supposed to be eating 3 eggs a week, and they said that it had increased your LDL or bad cholesterol, and that this would have many negative side effects, and we're going to be going over exactly why this is true or not true. We'll find out in the video, and explaining to you what HDL and LDL are and how they help or don't help your body, and how you can implement them in your diet plans and nutrition plans to make sure you get the most out of your food and what's on your plate. So without further ado, let's get in the video. Alright guys, so welcome back. What I was talking about before was how the American Health Association back in the 1900s were convinced that eggs were unhealthy because they had very high cholesterol levels, and that this would lead to increases in cardiovascular disease rates. So when we're digesting, or let's say an egg in this example, the egg's fats get sent into our bodies, and we emulsify them and as they go through the intestine. And what this does is that it turns into transportable nutrients. So as our body's digesting it, gets wrapped up, and now we can transport it throughout different parts of our body and utilize the fats. These fats get transported when they're being turned into cholesterol to the liver, where hepatocytes, which are specialized cells in the liver, turn the emulsified fat cells into lipoproteins. These lipoproteins are packages with varying densities and varying amounts of protein and fat ratios, and we use these lipoproteins to fuel our body for building muscle, for all these different things. The ratios are always different depending on where the lipoprotein needs to be used. So we have some lipoproteins like VLDL that are very low density lipoproteins. We put those proteins, specifically the VLDL lipoproteins, into our muscles and our fat cells, and VLDL specifically can, after it's sent into our fat or muscle cells, can then be converted into LDL, which is what we're mainly trying to talk about here. LDL is known as bad cholesterol, which is what's mainly associated with bad cholesterol. LDL is very prone to accumulating or being built up on our cell wall, not cell walls, our inner arteries and blood vessels. And what happens is that we have these buildup of LDL, that because it accumulates there, and we get these thinning of our blood vessels through the inside. Because imagine there's clumps of dirt just building up on the inside of your blood vessels. And what happens is that then our bodies send out these specialized white blood cells called macrophages. These macrophages go in and attack these LDL buildups, that when the LDL gets all built up and it's blocking our pathways, because the small amount of LDL is necessary since we need it. It's one of the lipids that we use, lipoproteins that we use to help fuel our body. But when there's too much, it gets built up, and these macrophages start breaking it down. But when there's too much that the macrophages can't completely absorb all the lipids and eliminate them, what happens is that these macrophages they die pretty much. They get too filled up with these lipids, or LDL in this case, and LDL is a lipid, and they build up with the LDL, making the inner, what's called buildup, get more built up, because now you have the LDL buildup with macrophage buildup, and this buildup leads to more macrophage recruitment, or more calling up the macrophages to try to take care of the LDL, and the new macrophages that have been dying and getting stuck onto the LDL, making the narrowing of the blood vessel expedite. so it gets narrower quicker, and it creates this little cap over the LDL that leads to the, what would I be looking for? The weakening, not the weakening of the structure of the blood vessels, because the blood vessels, now that they have this, it's like I try to think about like if you put ice on something, it like weakens the structure of it because then you crack it, it breaks. It's kind of like that, but not really. Or like an acid or something, and it's just slowly messing up the structure of the blood vessels. And what happens is that if the narrowing doesn't clot up the blood vessel, then the blood vessel will likely rupture. And both scenarios, either the clotting of the blood vessel or the rupturing of the blood vessel, lead to loads of internal cardiovascular risks with injuries and not injuries, diseases, and we're trying to avoid that. So what does our body use? Despite when we can't use these macrophages to eliminate the LDL, we use HDL, which is commonly known as good cholesterol. HDL has higher protein in compared to the LDL, because LDL is fattier lipoprotein. So we utilize HDL heavily to get rid of all of this bad LDL. HDL, our body produces an LDL depending on what foods we eat. So this goes right back to what the American Heart Association was saying. In general, when we want to be increasing our HDL, it's very important that we eat foods like grains, fibrous fruits and vegetables. Fish increases the amount of HDL that we produce, and avoid certain types of fats when our LDL is getting very high, because then we need these fats to survive. Specifically saturated fats and trans fats. The American Heart Association noticed that we have certain amounts of saturated fats in the eggs, but if you look at the research through the years past that, since that was in the 1900s, we've decided and gone back and looked at it and realized that we have relatively low, or much lower, saturated fats than what the American Heart Association originally thought there was within the eggs. So they generally now say that you should eat at least one egg a day, or one egg a day would be considered relatively healthy, unless you already have very high LDL. Since it's very hard to overeat eggs and get issues with eating eggs in terms of LDL. The fats that, if you want to really increase your HDL levels, because people always think that fats are all bad. If saturated fats are fine, trans fats are fine, you need some of those. Don't get too nitpicky over that. If some people like completely eliminate them, you need at least a few of them. But what you really want to focus on is, if your LDL levels are low, is you could reduce your saturated and trans fats, but I'd highly recommend looking at unsaturated fats, which that goes back to the fish. I'm pretty sure also nuts have high levels of unsaturated fats, but you might have to go and double check me on that. So these unsaturated fats really help increase the HDL levels that we need to, boom, go and attack the, what's it called again, LDL. And that'll get rid of any issues that we have with cardiovascular risks and diseases and stuff, as long as we have high enough HDL levels, and not to worry too much about the unsaturated, the saturated and the trans fats. That's what I like to do if I'm looking at my diet. I look at the amount of unsaturated fats and I just pump that up a whole bunch, and don't worry too much about the saturated or trans fats. Although if your LDL levels are very, very high, and you have also genetics play a role in this, certain genetic types have higher risks of LDL. If your family tree has a high risk of LDL being increased, increasing with age and being pretty high, then it might be more wise for you to just eliminate most of your saturated and trans fats and go crazy on the unsaturated fats, even more than a regular person. Or if you want, you can go talk to your doctor. Your doctor would probably already prescribe this to you. There's new medicines like statin, which help with the reduction in VDLDL. I don't know. LD, yeah, the one with the V. And then the LDL. Because what happens is that these reduce the rate of production of VLDL. And the thing is, these names are kind of complicated, and I prefer for you guys to understand what I'm saying. But the VLDL produces LDL. So we want to lower the VLDL production if we want to reduce the LDL production. But we also need VLDL as energy for proteins and muscles. So I also, the statin, that's the only negative side effect that you might get from taking statin. But statin is medicine that we have now that helps reduce the rate production of VLDL that will then reduce the production of LDL, which is bad cholesterol. So then that would decrease the need of good cholesterol, but it's still good to get good cholesterol. So in general, the main takeaway from this video is that you can eat all the eggs you want. Just pay attention, take your blood work, and if you do have any issues, make sure you increase your good cholesterol in your diet. Slowly decrease your bad cholesterol. Bad cholesterol isn't necessarily bad because you do need some of it. And very much so focus on your diet, what's on your plate. Increase vegetables, fibrous fruits, and you'll be good to go. So don't feel bad if you're eating 2 to 3 eggs a day, as long as you're paying good attention. And worst case scenario, talk to your doctor and you can get prescribed statin, and then you can decrease and find some other sorts of proteins. For example, egg white, which is pretty much gives you all the protein that you need, and without the high cholesterol, or not even really high cholesterol, the cholesterol that comes with eggs, because it's not super duper high. And that'll also be a good tool for you to use. So that's pretty much it for today, guys. Longer video than normal. I hope I didn't confuse you, but I wanted to give an explanation on HDL and LDL so you guys get an idea on how they work and how lipids work. So yeah, thanks so much for watching, and I hope you learned something new. Comment, like, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye bye.